Welcome back to another learning video. Here we have an example of a dive store that runs operations at a resort in the Florida Keys. So what we're going to do here is take a look at this. I'll make it a little bit larger. We're going to do some pivot tables, slicers, and subtotaling for this dive store. And they do all kinds of dives, individual dives, beach dives. They do a lot of dives. It's a data set. If you need a data set, just drop me a note in the comments and I can send it to you. It's important here. So we have this information. Let's justify this over here if I can get everything to line up. And certainly we have data with a filter here, which is data and then filters on and off. I'm going to leave the filters on with the data, but this is a base data. So as a rule, never mess around with base data. So it's always good to copy the data out for operations. So we're going to do 3 operations today. We're going to work with tables, we're going to do a pivot table, and we're going to create subtotals. So there's 3 operations we're going to do this. The first, let's progress. Let's just do right click, move or copy, create a copy, move to the end. And the first one, I'm going to double click it, or you can right click to rename, and we're going to call this Excel table. Yeah, I like that. We'll put an underscore between the 2. Then I'm going to insert a table. The way we can do that is you see the rows go down. What's it go down to here? 106. And so what we're going to do is insert table, and then you'll see that it automatically picks up. Excel's kind of smart because it's in the top left corner, and it just sees everything's got consistent across the columns and rows, so it automatically comes to the bottom. And your table has headers. If you didn't check that, it would be part of the records, but it is a header, so say OK. So now we have a table. All right, that was a good start. You see, it still has filters. We're going to choose a color coordination here, and I'm going to do this on my Mac version today. We're going to choose this color here, which is the orange table style medium 3. I'm going to insert a total row at the bottom. So we have a couple fields, number of dives and amount. So I'm going to actually sum the number of dives too by using this total row feature here. And if I count if, they don't have a count if. Well, maybe they do. I see more functions. They have, oh yeah, we can build a full formula. Let's not get too crazy because the video is going to be kind of short. We're just going to count the number of things going on here. That way when I filter it, these totals will update. And the final one sitting here is a subtotal amount, which is a sum. So when I filter something, and I'm going to filter it made by rec dives, select all, let's take a look at the rec dives. It will tell me that I had 25 and 10 rec dives, so it's pretty good. I get that. So then I can remove the filter just by selecting all and going back to that, resetting it. So I think this is a really good thing. Let's go ahead and, that was good to do it like that, but let's take this filtering to another level. Let's use a slicer. But before we do that, let's make sure there's no duplicates in here. So let's click on the remove duplicates. See if there's any duplicates. No duplicate values found, so we're good there. But there could have been. We hit insert slicer, and we're going to do this on categorical variables. And that really is day, the sales ID of the person who sold it, the business. Number of dives is not a categorical variable. The type is. It's more of a numeric value and an amount value. Date isn't just random. Categorical is dated by about data. So we're going to put these up here, one by one, these filters. We'll put them on the top row because when this table shrinks and expands, it's going to be kind of interesting. And these are slicers that are assigned to a table. And I'm going to make the sheet a little bit bigger. Actually, I'm going to make it a lot bigger on my screen. I have a very large screen, so I can get a lot in here. But we click here, we click slicer menu, yellow, light orange, style 2. I don't know if they had style 3, but let's go with style 2 here. Just keep it simple. I want to change the color of the slicers related to the table because I'm going to progress and do this in different ways and keep everything very vanilla. Okay, so when I want to do rec dives, now I see direct dives. Wall dives, I see how much we do wall dives. Photography based dives, oh, that's pretty good. Then beach dives. But how do I I could sum them all by one in subtotal. We have to look at an example and really understand the data. Let me click this to exit the filter. Now I've done the dives. Let's take a look at all these. We can bring forward, we can adjust them, and we can do all kinds of aligning with slicers. Then on the table, if we go back to the table, you'll see there's a table menu, and we've already checked for duplicates. I can convert it back to a range. I want to do that. I can refresh the table if I'm pulling from a data source. I could have banded columns, but I don't really want that. I like the banded rows. Banded, not banded. I prefer that because it's easier to see row by row. And we're good there, or I can remove the filters off or on. I'm going to leave them on. I think this is a good example of creating an Excel table, and I'm going to call it dive sales. And hit enter, and that tell you the table is renamed to that. So no matter where I'm at, I can click like this and go dive sales. So if I say I go over here to the company page and I want to get to the dive sales table, I can simply click the down arrow and go down dive sales, and it takes me over to the dive sales table. All right, so this is good. Now let's go ahead and convert this to a range. Remember, we don't want to ruin anything we're doing. We're going to build a pivot table. I want to create, yet again, right click, move or copy, and I'm going to progress the data. And these are just going to propagate what I've done already, because I've already cleansed it, I've already gotten through. I didn't find any errors. I did check for duplicates, there were none. And I go over here, and then I'm going to call it pivot table and chart. All right, so now I have this table. I'm going to go from a table this time to a pivot table. I'm going to click on the first cell and go insert pivot table. I could get recommended tables, but it just did something weird, so I'm not going to enjoy that the way it comes up. It just does recommended table. We're supposed to really do something else other than that. Let's go to this way. I want to be very controlled. So it knows that my range is dive table. Okay, I named the range. Where do I want to put this? Do you see what I did? Mistake. I'm on the wrong sheet. When I click back, I went to the left and it put the dive tables automatically, dropped it in this one spot. And you see, I don't even like the table they created for me. I'm going to delete that sheet and come back to my pivot table and chart. This is where I wanted it. Pivot table, and then choose existing worksheet. And I'm going to put my pivot table below the slicers. Right here in the existing worksheet. Let's just work with that. It's a good logical spot, and I'll move it once I get there. So I'm here. So now let's take this field, and we click on it and drag it so it floats. I want to see what I want to have in here. So in this case, we want to see, let's see if this works. Business, see it drops me into dives. Let's see if it takes the day. It's going to give me the detailed day or the full day. Oh, if I'm afraid of, it's not the formatting of the day. Maybe what I would do, we have to do that customization. See, it gives me individual days. Day is really a field. What I'll do instead is I will put in number of, I'm going to put the sales ID of the person into the column. That's what I want to do, is who's selling what. Let's just focus on who's selling what. Okay, so this would be good. So a couple things we're going to want to do. We're going to put the amount into the values dimension, and some amounts is kind of really goofy, but let's hit this dot down. Let's change this. I think it is good to us to have a sum of the amount, which is fine, but we need to change this number. I don't want all the decimals. That looks very goofy. Currency, we're going to change the currency to 0, and we're going to think about where this dive shop, what's in the Florida Keys, right? Could be dollars. Let's just say we were selling and marketing to our friends in England for this one. I'm going to choose English United Kingdom. A lot of sales are expected to come from there, and we're going to look at the international sales only. In this case, we say OK. Okay, it should come back, and then we have pounds. Okay, this is good. Then that's a total amount, right? But I really want the average amount also. Hit this drop down, hit the average number format did not do me any favors by not memorizing where we were. Yeah, I don't really worry about pennies. We're looking for big dollars here. So we'll come out of the dollars. We'll come back to Great British Pound. We're selling to the English. Hopefully we get a lot of money there. Okay, so now I got average of amount in that. Okay, maybe I can apply a filter on the top by a sales date in that regard. And looking at it, we have a lot of NAs in our table, a number of dives. So it did not translate onto the table. Let's take a look at the pivot table, ignore those or any problems. And I didn't get any errors, so it's okay. We got the pivot table going here, so that's a good summary table. But you know, as I scoot back across, come back in, and drag my table over a little bit, we've taken care of all the quadrant here. We formatted each one individually, which was good, but I don't love it. Let's kind of change this format. Pivot table, analyze, like all these things I could do on pivot table. Let me go to design first. I want to change, stay consistent with, more or less consistent with the colors. So these are slicers. So if I go rect dives here, it changes everything. It'll price my whole table. Well, lovely. By type. Let's kill that filter and take a look at what we did. Come back to it and say, maybe I shouldn't put sales ID up here. We can think about what we're going to do and then analyze it. What we'll do is we'll change it again from the sales ID was salesperson 123. That was fine actually. But when I went to rec dives, oh, I see. What happened was we didn't have the amount on the rec dive. So if you go to the rec, rec was a group dive. Should have actually went sales date. Let's drop rec dives into the top filter by type. At there. I'm trying to get up here. Type. Then, we got this little thing here. Can't see the filter. I'm going to move this out of the way. Having a little fun here. Out of the way. And in type, we can play with the different types of dives here. I have filter in multiple spots. And we can scroll down rec and see that table go. Okay, so it should define there. But, and you see, it goes in, but if we take that filter and get rid of that filter, then we select everything. The clear filter is fine. Then we choose rec from the recs portion. See, it moved the table up there. So you see where you put these filters makes a big difference because you can't actually see them. So you just have to move them around once you went to rec dives because it really wasn't a lot. So the table crunched, the table on the left crunched, and this crunched, and you would have to move the filters, the slicers, to see them. Take it off, and everything slides back down. So then, for that matter, maybe we want to move the table filters below the table. So when it moves out of the way, you can actually see these are table slicers as opposed to pivot table slicers. So you can see a little art to doing this in that regard. For that matter, you may want to move your pivot table up a little higher. That way you can just do it. So if we choose a wall dive, we get that. It didn't come up on the thing. The rec dive does come up on the thing. Beach dive, we have some dives. Photography, nothing. Reef. Interesting. Oh, because going into the hidden rows, that's what the problem is. So you see when you're filtering, what you can notice is it crunches the table when you filter. So when you filter, the table actually gets reduced. You can't see it. So you just got to be careful because it hides the row of data. So sometimes, like what it says, it gives you the option, do you want to put this pivot table on another page or below the table or somewhere else? Sometimes it just makes a lot of sense to do that, because you don't get the functionality that you want this way. So let's go ahead and take that advice and say, okay, this is not really what we wanted to do. Certainly filtering out the table was not the way we wanted to do it. So let's move these back out of the way up here. just does it. I don't have any filters on, do I? No, I do not. We'll come back over here. We'll put this stuff out of the way. These are table filters. And you saw how the table filters are giving us a little bit of a hard time. So we're going to move them again. And doing this on purpose where you can see the difference for things. And then we'll click on the pivot table. This time, pivot table analyze, and put our own slicers in here, saying that didn't really work very well. So for table, I'm not sure it's good. So I put day, sales ID, business, and type. Say OK. These are pivot table slicers, which are different than the other slicers. And let's see the difference of these and how they work versus the table slicers, because it really is a little bit of a difference. And we're going to leave a different color here for it. So let's try the rect dive and see if it just goes nuts again. See, it did not. The table did not adjust. Only the pivot table adjusted. That's an important thing. Group dives, only the pivot table does. So you can see, much more effective. I'm able to keep it. So you know if you filter the table, probably don't want the table filters on here, because we saw what happened, right? So I'm going to delete them. Click one by one. Move this over. I don't want to kill it yet. And delete them because it was more annoying than it was practical. So now we have these, and maybe I'll come back and I'll go to the slicers again. Now I can make them orange. Certainly this is a pivot table chart, and these are not table slicers. These are pivot table slicers, and you can see the difference in how they operate differently. That's going to be very important that you understand the full difference of each one of these. All right, so now we're going to progress and say we've created our pivot table, we've created our table, but now I want to create a subtotal. I want to progress the subtotals in here. So let's go ahead and right click again, and we're going to progress our data from one to the other. Remember, I always left my source data right where it is, source. Move or copy, create a copy, move to end, and then say OK. And this time I'm going to create a subtotal table, so I'm going to call it subtotal. Now I have subtotals. You know, subtotals have actually nothing to do with pivot tables. Let's just highlight all these columns, right click, clear contents, gone, and we'll just delete the slicers because we're going to subtotal anyway. And you see I'm on the subtotal page. Now, to create a subtotal, you go to data subtotals, but you'll quickly find out it won't exist. On the subtotals, you go in, it's grayed out. You can't do subtotals on a table, not that way anyway. So what you have to do is you'll have to revert this, go back to the table, convert to range, come out of the range, now it's become the normal range. But you know it has all the shading. The problem is, watch, when we sort, the shading will get messed up. So we go data, let's just do a hypothetical sort. Maybe we'll sort by sales ID. It kind of sorts, and sometimes you can see you end up with doubles here. It's not aligned. So we have to go back, and we really need to apply this formatting to get rid of it. Either we can go back into the fill, highlight and clear it, right? There's multiple ways of doing this. And you can basically no fill, and it gets rid of everything. This is bad because you saw that it was that. We're going to clean this up, and we're going to make this black. And we have our title. So that was probably the easiest way of doing it. So we can just sort, and everything is kind of just not shaded. So now we can do subtotals. So now the question is, what subtotals do we want? Let's think about this logically. So we run a dive business, so certainly we want a subtotal. You know, day of the week can be really important for a dive business because Sundays we tend to do a lot of diving. If we don't know which day of the week people are going diving, it's a vacation type business. We're selling to the British folks. So we have to think about those kind of things. So I think in this case, we could run a couple of subtotals. So let's subtotal this one by, let's change the name to type. Let's subtotal by type and day. And let's progress from here. So we'll say date, we have to sort it first. Anytime we subtotal, we always got to sort it first, otherwise it looks goofy. So like for example, if I just go data, you'll see that subtotal is available, and I go by every change in type, right? Just say we're going to sum it for this moment. replace current subtotals. There are no subtotals at the moment, so I'm going to check that off. I say OK. It's not really working well, right? You see, it's kind of creating a lot of garbage over here. It's not really what you wanted, right? We go back to subtotal, we remove all, get rid of it. So you have to really sort. So you click sort, and then we're going to do sort by type, and then add a level because we're going to also sort by day. Within type day. Sure. We have a custom list. I don't know if it's going to really work. The days aren't set up properly that way, but you could have. Then we're going to say OK, and voila, it does its sort. So it's by type. Each type came first, not applicable because restaurant food sales aren't a dive. So that worked out well. Let's try the subtotal at this point. So subtotal, for each change in type, we'll sum it, we'll be okay. We're not going to replace subtotal because there are none in here. The day's time. Alright, that was kind of interesting. We want to subtotal by day. I don't know if we want to subtotal by day. Number of dives. I think I'm okay with this one. This worked out alright. It was a simple level. It actually gave us what we wanted. It gave us a grand total below and everything else. So analysis wise, I'm okay with this. A simple basic subtotal. It gives me a total for every reef so we can see what these subtotals are. You know, certainly go to home and we apply the different currencies that we have in here. You know, more formats and those kind of things, just normal Excel. Let's leave it off for a moment though. And we have, you can see which ones are the biggest and which one we do. Food. We have to sell more food. Clearly food is driving everything here. Okay, so we'll leave it on level 3. Now let's go ahead and right click and move our copy, and let's do another subtotal. We're going to create a copy. It's not a table anymore, it's a subtotaling. We'll say OK. And we'll analyze this data one more time. So this time, business. Maybe we could subtotal by business and type. That would make sense. Let's see which business. It would be very, very linear, actually. The reason to subtotal for that in that regard. But type, you don't have to. So it's the other thing. You don't have to double subtotal if you do it. But look at this. Would be good to look at the sales ID to subtotal on the sales ID to see what they're selling. That repeats across different. These types are residential people only do beaches, but certainly understanding sales by person would be really good. So we can do sales and business. So let's click on A1, go to data. We're going to go to subtotal, and we're going to remove all. We have to get rid of the subtotals first. Then we're going to go data sort, because we're going to do it by sales ID first, add a level, then do it by business as your second one. And sales by ID, smallest to largest, the other numeric one of that, we can do that with just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And business, we can put A to Z, alphabetical. Okay, I'm good with that. And so, okay, and now it's sorted, significantly different. So now we go data, subtotal, for each change in sales ID, we're going to sum it on the amount. We're not going to replace current subtotals, make sure that's off. That was good. And then we're going to do it again, and we're going to come back, and we're going to do it by business, and we can get their breakdown in double layers. Do not put the subtotals in there, and we get their business. Oh, okay, this is good. I have double level subtotaling. Ah, yes. So group, this is person 1, this is person 2. Clearly our salesperson number 1 tends to be doing really well. We have this group. All right, that was adequate. So now I can see there's 2 different types of report, by type and day. But it's not really by type. This one here is, yeah, it's by type, and this one's not type. This one here, I need to rename it. This is by sales ID. ID and biz and business. So we have to rename it. So maybe I want to get back to the original form. You remember this was the original data we got? How do we get back to the original data from here? So it's pretty simple. We can go move a copy. We can create a copy. We move to end, say OK. And here, we click up here, and we simply go data, subtotal, remove all, and it purges all the data. And we start from scratch. So there we are, and this would be the raw data that we started off with, and all those things. We covered quite a few things here. We had a company who's selling business to England, if they're going through, I guess, Booking.com or something, TripAdvisor or something. They're cornering that market. We built Excel tables, and we put table filters, slicers, and we were able to slice things, as you saw. Rect dives were kind of fun. We went to pivot table. We left the table slicers here, but that didn't work so well because it moved the table around. If we want to get the rect dives on a pivot table, it was much more effective when we did it from pivot table slicers. Then, on a subtotal type, and day, and subtotal ID by day, and then raw data. The only thing really missing is this table and chart. Maybe we should put a chart on here. We can come back to this pivot table. It's okay to come back. Pivot table, analyze, and then go to pivot chart, and then put this chart up here, maybe. And then from the pivot chart, we can probably pick a different design type on charts. Pick it like that, and chart type, column. Maybe you can stack them, and those kind of things. So this is a good example of how to do this on a Mac in that regard, but certainly available on a Microsoft platform. So great analysis, much to do, and this will be fine, of course, and it's wonderful. We'll save this, and I think enjoy. It was a fun video to create and explore this dive set, which I had not done before.